Hey everyone, we're just going to give a few more minutes before we get started, but thanks for joining so far. Okay, perfect. I think we can get started. We have a good amount of content to try to get through, and a lot of questions for you who've joined today. So looking forward to getting through this. Just in terms of kind of instructions for the meeting, please do mute yourself during the presentations just to reduce background noise. If you do have any questions, feel free to unmute and ask, or to just type the question into the chat. I won't be presenting for too long today. Just want to provide a bit of background information before we get into some discussions. Yeah, so that should be okay. And we're also going to be just using a virtual poll, so menti.com. We'll go through kind of the instructions, but essentially you'll need to have a web browser open, either on your computer or a smartphone, to be able to participate. So we will do that. If there is, if you have any questions or issues while we're walking through this, feel free to reach out to Catherine in the chat, and she can help with technical support. Okay, perfect. Last piece is we're going to be recording this this session just to be able to put it up on Connect PTBO for those who are unable to attend. So I just want to flag that. Perfect. So just to kick things off, I'd like to pass it over to Michael with the city.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt. And so first off, just like to respectfully acknowledge that we're on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe, and we offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earths and our relations, and may we honor those teachings. And just wanted to thank everybody for joining tonight. This is a a very exciting project that we're very much looking forward to getting input from the community on how to make it most effective. As you will see as we go through the the presentation here, you know, the residential homes sector is the largest contributing element of greenhouse gas emissions from the community. So this is a key initiative that the city has is undertaking with a variety of partners in the community to be able to scope and plan this program in a way that it can encourage as much participation and as much subscription from people in the community to help them make these some various changes to their homes to help mitigate their impact on climate change. And so we're very grateful to have the team from Dunsky on board who have a lot of experience in designing, implementing, and evaluating these programs. So with that, I think I'll pass it back to Matt. And again, thank you everybody for taking time to join us tonight.
Great, thanks so much, Michael. So yeah, as Michael said, we're Dunsky Energy and Climate, and today this is one of our first workshops, public engagement workshops on the to help homeowners benefit from home energy efficiency. So we have myself and Catherine from the Dunsky team, so I'll be leading through a lot of this, well, most of today's presentation and discussion. And from the city, we're joined by a few members. Michael, Ian, and James are all on the call today, so they'll also be listening and participating. Just in terms of the content or agenda, so really just wanted to do a brief welcome. We'll talk about workshop objectives, and then we'll get into the thick of things. So I'll give a brief presentation on kind of climate change and energy efficiency and what that means for the city. And then we'll jump into three different discussions. The first about, you know, what's particular about the city of Peterborough, the second about your experiences with energy efficiency retrofits in the city, and the third discussion around how can we help make things easier. And then we'll just touch on next steps. In terms of workshop objectives, so first is really to share some of the information we've gathered so far around home energy efficiency retrofits and recent trends in the city, particularly related to climate goals. And then the next two are really around
fun in hand, but stay away from those oranges.
Apologies for that. The second piece is really around learning from you about your experience in conducting energy efficiency and pursuing energy efficiency, and really understanding again how the city can help homeowners and renters to really do some of these renovations. So our first stage is really we have a welcome poll. So if you can log into menti.com, just type it into your browser and it'll prompt you for a code. And the code is 3475745. And then there'll be a few questions there. So first is around which group do you most associate with tonight? Homeowners, renters, community org members, or business community members, etc. So which of those, just to get a sense of who's on the call. What type of home do you live in? Single, detached, single attached, duplex, townhouse, or lower high rise? And then how comfortable is your home? Do you find it very comfortable or very uncomfortable, somewhere in between? So I'll pass it over to Catherine. For the poll.
So we have around 18 people online tonight, so we should see the answers coming in. If you have trouble accessing the code is at the top of the screen here. You could go to menti.com and use the code that's right there, or it's in the chat of the Zoom call. So on your side, you should be able to answer the 3 questions one at a time, and I'll show the answers when we have most people that answered the first question. So we have 4 people so far that answered. So also a small reminder for everyone, if you can put yourself on mute during the presentation to minimize the background noise, and then unmute yourself when it's a time to talk.
I'm sorry,
Great.
maybe I'm missing something here. Where are you supposed to vote? I'm trying to click on the screen and it's not registering. Sorry.
So you can go on a browser, either on your
Oh.
phone or open a different browser and enter the address menti.com, menti.com. That's at the top of the screen here. And then there is a code, which is in the top of the screen, 3475745, and then you'll see the questions and you can answer the questions. And right now I'm sharing my page, which is where we see the answers. So
I'm sorry, I can see, go to this. I guess I just have to key it in because I can't copy and paste that. You need to have this in the copy and paste option.
for the address or the code?
Well, any of it. I can't, if I,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if I
enter it
reduce
by-
it, I can't read it. I need new glasses and. Okay.
It's also in the chat if you want to go and copy paste it. I copy pasted it in the chat of the
Okay.
Zoom call.
Okay, that'll help. Thank you.
All right, so as the answers are coming in, we have we have homeowners with us tonight, renter, landlord, community organization member, energy advisors, and someone who didn't think that they qualified in one of those groups the most tonight. So welcome everyone. Thanks for being there with us. I'll move soon to the next question. So the next question was, what kind of home do you live in? So we have most people being in single family house, detached. And a few people are in low-rise multifamily, so less than 5 stories building, which matches very well with how the housing is distributed in Peterborough. So. And the last question is, how comfortable is your home? So I'm glad that no one so far has answered that their home is very uncomfortable. So glad to know that, but do we still have some people for which their house is not very, very comfortable? So we have a distribution between uncomfortable to very comfortable with the people in the audience tonight.
That's perfect. Yeah, so it's great to see that we have a bit of a range of who's present today, and like Catherine said, it's also great to see that people are relatively happy with the comforts of their home. So I will get into just a bit of a presentation in terms of why we're here. So to provide a bit more context, so the city declared a climate emergency and has set a goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And these are pretty significant goals. So looking to reduce by 45% by 2030 and achieving net zero emissions by 2050. And this is citywide, so it's not just for city owned infrastructure or anything like that. It's for all buildings and all activities within the city. So of those kind of different components that exist, the residential sector does make up a pretty significant portion. So almost 2/5 of the emissions are from the residential sector, and within that sector, about 60% or 58% are from single-family homes. A lot of those homes, almost 2/3 of those, were built before 1980. So there are opportunities there. To retrofit and bring homes up to code or even beyond. And also when we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions, natural gas space heating is prevalent within the city. So there is an opportunity there as well to potentially do some electrification or to move away from natural gas for that space heating aspect. And so to support these upgrades that would be required for the housing stock in order to actually achieve these 2030 and 2050 objectives, cities currently in the process of designing the Home Energy Efficiency Program, so HEEP. And this is being done with support from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So they're supporting this program design and will hopefully support the program implementation afterwards. HEEP itself has some pretty ambitious goals, so looking to achieve some pretty deep efficiency gains for homes, so between 30 to 50% per home. This is not for all homes, but would be good to see that in some homes. Also looking for lower building greenhouse gas emission intensities, which kind of go hand in hand with the energy savings. And in terms of the target, so for the first 4 years of this program, targeting 1,100 homes or 275 homes per year. As I mentioned, a lot of deep retrofits are going to be targeted, but this can also include, this 1,100 can also include swap outs and smaller initiatives where financing would still be beneficial, but wouldn't necessarily be as intensive. So that's the overall kind of objectives as we're setting out on this on the planning of this program. In terms of timeline, so just wanted to provide a bit of a sense on how quickly this would roll out. So right now, we're still in the development of a finance solution, determining which would be the most appropriate. And to do so, we're doing a lot of stakeholder engagement, including speaking to all of you. We'll have quite a bit of stakeholder engagement happening over the next few months, and then we'll wrap everything up into a design report during the summer. This will go for council approval, and there'll be an application drafted for FCM funding support. In all likelihood, what will likely happen then is FCM will do this review, hopefully grant the funding, and there'll be a contracting period. So this is a bit indeterminate, but then we'll get into kind of program launch prep and ultimately program launch. So essentially the HEEP really would be coming online towards the tail end of 2023 is where we see it now, and we'll refine this estimate as we kind of walk through or as we move through the design of the program itself. In terms of meeting the climate emergency target, so some of the thinking is that the city's targets will require about 40% of detached and semi-detached homes to undergo some level of energy retrofits by 2030. So less than 10 years to do quite a bit of work. And when we look at what's typical, usually we're talking about a 1% renovation rate throughout Canada. It's been a bit less in the last few years in the city specifically. So there is some work to do, and a financing program like HEEP will support homeowners in doing more of these. The graph is really showing kind of the breakdown of the housing stock ultimately, and as we kind of noted, most of it is for single family homes, but there are also some row homes, some semi-detached homes, and apartment buildings. Part of the stipulations on the FCM funding is that there is a focus on single family. So that's currently where the program is being designed for, but there is an opportunity to branch out in the future once we've kind of tackled some of this single family side of things. In terms of why homeowners would be interested in completing energy efficient home retrofits, so there's the bill saving side of things, which is an important one. But what most often drives these renovations is actually improved comfort in the home, potentially some health and safety improvements, increasing the home value, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And there's also the added benefit of increasing the local industry, so providing more skilled jobs and trades within the city, so an extra benefit. In terms of, there's a few different programs that exist currently or that are upcoming that also provide grants or potential loans to do this type of work. So I just wanted to touch on those just to make sure that we can distinguish between what HEEP will be doing versus what some of these other programs that are already in the market are doing. So here we have the Peterborough Renovates program. So this is targeted at lower income homeowners and provides some forgivable loans. So it's funded by the Ontario government. I believe it's unfunded at the moment, but has been quite successful in its operation. Enbridge offers a couple of different programs, one to all of their customers and the other to, again, lower income homeowners. These would be grant programs, so you'd receive a portion of like a certain percentage perhaps, or a dollar amount after you've done the renovations. Save on Energy has a similar program to Enbridge's winterproofing program, again around targeting lower income homes. And then in terms of programs that are available for everyone, there's the Greener Homes Grant, which is a federal program. So this is up to $5,600 that would be reimbursed for energy audits and different installations of measures within homes. So some of the limitations on that is that it's a Canada-wide program. They have funding for around 700,000 homes, but there's many, many more homes across the country. So it is a bit limited on that front. And then finally, there is a potential loan program that's in the works. So CMHC has been tasked with developing a Greener Homes interest-free loan program. This is still in development, but essentially what it looks to be is a $40,000 interest-free loan that would be provided over a 10-year period. So again, one of the key limitations on this is that they're expecting about 175,000 loans available across the country, and with roughly 10 million homes, that will only go so far. Wanted to also talk a bit about EnerGuide because this is a key program that supports energy efficiency retrofits, especially in single family homes. So the EnerGuide rating system is a tool that provides some guidance in terms of what types of retrofits would be worthwhile for you to conduct on your home, and also level sets kind of where your home is at and where it's going. It's very similar to when you buy a new refrigerator or a freezer. There's a little indicator that says how efficient your product is. It's the same type of idea, but for a home. So the EnerGuide rating system was developed in Canada. It's been around for many years, and there's been a lot of homes that have gone through this. And there's quite the network of licensed service organizations and registered energy advisors throughout the country. When we look at the city specifically, this is just a snapshot of kind of where some of these licensed service organizations are. And there are a few in Peterborough, but also several within kind of the broader region, which is great. So there is capacity to do these EnerGuide audits, and part of the SEM funding requirements or stipulations is that EnerGuide audits be conducted. So it's excellent that there is capacity, and we're reaching out to energy auditors as well as part of this initiative, just to really understand how that capacity will fit in with this potential program. The other side of things is, are there people available to actually do the work? So local contractors. And so we have a map here, again, with contractors within the area. So again, it seems like a pretty good capacity. We're reaching out again to contractors to really understand that a bit more. But just wanted to identify that as another positive for this program. With respect to how many homes have been retrofitted in the last few years, we pulled some data from NRCan around the EnerGuide audits, and specifically the pre-evaluation. So typically there's the 2 evaluations, pre and post. So before you've done the work and afterwards. And it's been a bit less than 1% of homes that have gone through. So around 300 homes, a little bit more than 300 homes over the last 5 years. And so one of the questions we're exploring is, why aren't more homes being retrofitted in Peterborough? So we'll look to explore this a bit more in a few minutes when we get to the questions. Finally, I just want to touch on some of the common barriers to home energy retrofits. So when we're talking about these types of retrofits, it could be energy efficiency. So things like a new water heater or more insulation, new windows and doors, air source heat pump or ground source heat pump, etc. And then renewable energy on that side of things, really typically a focus on solar. So some solar panels, it could be for generating electricity or for producing hot water. But those are kind of the 2 fronts of this when we're talking about these types of retrofits. And there's a few different considerations that come into play in terms of barriers. So one of the main ones when we're talking about financial considerations is really the upfront cost. So the cost of home upgrades, there's usually a high cost high cost initially. And so it can be nice to spread that over time, which is what a program like HEEP would do by offering financing. Access to credit is another, and in this, not everyone or not all homeowners necessarily have availability or the ability to access that funding. So HEEP could provide additional access, and part of the limitations for that access could be that you typically, like a homeowner has a poor credit score. So there are different financing initiatives that have found kind of alternatives to determining whether individual homeowners would be likely to repay. So maybe it's taking a look at the property tax bill repayment, taking a look at utility payment history. There's a few options there. So those are a few financial considerations. And then from the construction side of things, retrofits can be complex and they can be time consuming. So where do we start? What's the next step, etc. Those can be some questions that homeowners are not as familiar with. There can be competing priorities. So do I want to add more insulation, or do I want a new kitchen counter, or a new bathroom, for example? Sometimes it can be difficult to access contractors and/or materials. So we've seen some supply chain issues over the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic. And then finally, just general awareness. It can be difficult, or some homeowners just aren't aware of some of the opportunities and options that exist. So tonight, we really want to understand your experiences relative to these barriers, and if there's any kind of unique or local experience specific to the city itself. So we'll get into our first discussion, and I think we'll keep it just within the group, and we'll open things up. But before I get to that, are there any questions? I see there's a few comments in the chat. Any questions in the chat, or any questions before we proceed to the discussion?
Yeah, Matt, we had a question around Energuide audits
Okay.
being on a voluntary basis. And because in France, they're required when a house is sold.
Yes.
And the same question about what are the incentives for people to have their house retrofitted.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, in terms of Energuide audits, they currently are on a voluntary basis. The federal government in the most recent mandate letters did issue a request to investigate requiring them at time of sale. It's a little bit complicated because the home selling side is all under the provincial jurisdiction, but it seems like the federal government is going to draft some guidance that could be enabled by the provincial governments later on. So Ontario, under the Liberal government, they were pursuing requiring a version of the audits, I guess, so like a home energy labeling piece, but that was struck down after the last government fell. So there is some movement. It's probably, I'd expect it to happen in the next few years, kind of thing. In terms of, and the second question, sorry, Catherine, was, sorry, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. We have a question about how is Peterborough to reach a target of 10% of home energy efficiency? So we're currently only at 1%.
Yeah, and there isn't an intent to ramp up to 10% just with this HEEP program. But what we're looking for is really to provide an opportunity, well, essentially to reduce some of the barriers. So for individuals who are interested currently in pursuing this on a voluntary basis, that they have access to the financing that would be required to do so. And as you know, the province or the federal government comes with additional kind of measures to promote these, then the city would be ready and its homeowners would be able to benefit from this. Perfect.
That was all for the questions for now.
Great, thank you. Perfect. So in terms of our first discussion, at home in Peterborough, so really looking to understand a bit from you about what is unique about living in Peterborough. And secondly, is home comfort and heating and cooling costs a big or a small concern locally? So we'll take a few minutes for this, but ultimately would like to hear from you. Feel free to unmute and
you can unmute and directly talk, or you can write in the chat and I will read your comments.
I have a question, if I could.
Yeah, great.
So Leslie, I remember a very similar program to this going back to around 2002 with the federal government, which I totally missed because I renovated this entire house and I missed out on $6,000 worth of incentives, even though I made it much more energy efficient. So but say I had been able to take advantage of that, would I then be eligible for upgrades now? Because I'm sure many homeowners in Peterborough have before. I mean, even going back to, I'm thinking the 80s, the CHIP program, where you could add insulation or improve your windows and get some money from the government then, and back in 2000, you could also. So if I had participated in both of those, which I did one, am I eligible as a homeowner to tap in again?
Yeah, and the answer, yes, you would be. So typically there's a list of eligible measures. The Energuide audits will also provide some guidance because they'll take a snapshot of what your home looks like now, what your home could look like depending on the types of upgrades that you make. So maybe you installed insulation the last time around, but you know, you're still using natural gas heating, which is fine, but you're interested in electrifying because your values say you'd like to do a little bit more. That would be something that you'd be able to do, or maybe there's more insulation that's needed. Ultimately, if there's more opportunity, like with the targets of achieving net zero by 2050, homes will need to go a lot deeper than they have so far. So there's going to be opportunities to do so. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good to know, but I have an additional question because when I was doing all of these renovations, throughout my life, it was absolutely wrong to do electric. That was the most expensive way to energize your home, to heat your home. And so we literally would not even look at houses that had electric heat because it was so bad. And my whole house is gas, right?
Yep.
Like everything is gas. And I'm not alone. My whole generation has done this. And you've acknowledged this by saying, with the percentage of the population in Peterborough that are relying on gas. So how are we going to speak to people in my generation who literally avoided electric heat because it was so expensive and not sustainable back when we did it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So part of it is going to be that some of the, and I'm not today, but with the carbon pricing at the federal level, like the carbon tax at the federal level, there are going to be some changes in terms of how those finances work on a home by home basis. It's still a ways away. Like there is still quite the price difference between natural gas and electricity. The other piece is really going to be around new technologies. So air source heat pumps have really come a long way in the last few years. In terms of actually providing the heat required to do a good job on a home, and also provide the added benefit of providing cooling, so your air conditioning. So it's kind of two birds with one stone. So there are opportunities there as well. There's also opportunities to not necessarily go totally away from natural gas heating, but to use it as a backup supply, supplemented primarily by the electricity side of things. And Heather, I'm happy to. Do you have a question or a follow-up on this, or additional question?
Well, I was just going to say I'm a fairly new Peterborough resident, coming from Durham region. And one of the things I noticed about it is how green Peterborough is, and it's lovely. As far as transportation and stuff, it really helps to be able to cut gas costs that way by taking a bike or walking. But I did notice that the homes here are a lot older. We're in a house that was built in '58, and the windows aren't as good, and there's the walls aren't insulated very well, and those are things that are going to be really difficult and expensive. Like if you're looking at the actual walls, and the same thing with the basement walls. Some of the basement is finished, and so those are going to be really expensive things to try to counteract. I'm with Councillor Parnell there. I mean, when we've done this before, we were told electricity was the way not to go. So it'd be really neat to be able to find ways of doing things like using district energy. There's a lot of little parquets. I know we shouldn't use the parquets necessarily, but there's lots of places where you could put it in a district energy plant that could supply a whole lot of houses. Something that they were doing in Toronto. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but I'm really happy that you've got this going on, because we're struggling trying to figure out how we're going to cover, how we're going to make these changes. Some of them are very expensive.
Exactly. Yeah. Some of these can be quite expensive, and really the intent around this program is to give homeowners like you who are interested in making these changes the opportunity to do so. So providing financing so that you can spread out that cost over time. Some or all of it can be covered by your savings, and which would be great.
We have a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
So the first question, how will the HEEP be different than the other programs mentioned? And how will this be communicated to those actively searching for or participating in those other programs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as much as possible, we'll try to align the design of HEEP with those other programs. So HEEP is largely going to be loan-based, and most of the other programs are grant-based. So when they can work together, they will, to reduce the overall costs and then be able to spread the remaining costs over a longer period of time, would be the intent there. In terms of CMHC, their loan is a little bit different because it would be two different loan products, and likely only one would go ahead. We are in a bit of a waiting pattern with them, just to find out a bit more information about how their initiative is going to be structured. So we've been in contact, but waiting for it to go live, just to make sure.
A few other comments and questions. So we have a comment around the education about energy retrofits and energy efficiency being limited in Peterborough, and someone asking for information on different programs for education of homeowners that would be already available.
Perfect. So in terms of, if you're looking for information at the moment, I'd say the Canada Greener Homes grants, they're online and they have some information available there. On the other side of things, for the education component, that will be tied into the design of HEEP as well. So part of it is going to, like a big part of it is going to be offering that financing or those loans, but another big part of it is going to be providing the education that's required for homeowners like yourselves to understand how to go about this, what the process is, what the best way of tackling these upgrades is ultimately.
Thanks, Matt. Somebody mentioned that one of the good ways to raise awareness would be to have a demonstration house. And also we have someone else mentioning a model home with cost benefit analysis that homeowners could see. Would be a great way to promote the energy retrofits. Around what is unique about living in Peterborough, we have someone mentioning a high number of seniors, and that it's going to be important to be not only in methods that are online or electronic sense of that. So maybe using the tax bill mailing, hard copies, and leveraging senior centers and community care to engage with the seniors. So thanks for that. That's very great comment. We also have a comment around Peterborough having a great art scene and a lot of free festival, so a very active city. So if anybody else has a comment or question around you can also jump in for the time that I'll read in the next one.
Heather, did you have another question?
Hi, could you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah, perfect.
I don't know if you could see me because I think I'm in the dark.
Oh, it's working
yes,
now.
we can
it's
see
working
you,
now. Yeah.
I don't even know what I look like. No, I just thank you so much for this. This is great information, and I love the slides. And I noticed some Kim Zibble had put the link, and also Cheryl, to some of the information being shared. And then you're going to be putting this information with Connect Peterborough.
Exactly.
Okay, great. And the comments here are absolutely, like, I think is Emil, and I hope I'm not saying your name wrong, about PTBO being an art scene prior to COVID, which is true. Peterborough is great. We're hoping that someone said not to use the term build back better.
Yeah.
But anyhow, DBIA, I know I believe that they're going to be reviving the art scene back when it's post-COVID. So, and other things. So it's really great, but this is really great. My question is, I know you guys have put a lot into work, especially the city councilors have put a lot into work to connect Peterborough, PTBO. And I was wondering what sort of community, reaching out to the community groups, because there's a lot of like education here. People are mentioning education. How do we decipher? Cheryl had said, how do we decipher from the different groups that are being mentioned here? So there's a lot of education. So is there a community group in your Connect PTBO? Like that would just be something that I think would be needed.
Yeah, so we do have a partners stream as well that we've been engaging. And as part of them, we have Green Up on board. So they've been providing some additional insights and helping to circulate some of this information. we have there's a couple of other ones that are escaping me at
Sure,
the
I can
moment.
jump
Yeah,
in,
thank
Matt.
you.
Yeah, so we've got a host of program partners that are helping in to kind of scope it. So we've got folks from the local utilities, because obviously we need support from the utilities, both the electric utility Hydro One and Enbridge. We have Green Up, as was mentioned. We've got folks from Fleming College on board, because there's could be some education and training, some local capacity development required. We have some local credit unions, again, because there might be financing programs that need to be established. We have representatives from the Peterborough Kawartha Home Builders Association that are participating to kind of give us liaison with the to liaise with the various contractors and understand sort of the capacity and what those folks are capable of doing in a given year, and what what they know from being folks who are interacting with the residents that are undertaking these types of renovations and projects. We have the realtors, the Peterborough Kawartha Realtor Association as well, because again, that's another key group that has a lot of contacts with people who are buying, selling homes, and they have a lot of relationships with people and can kind of inform them about the trends of where things are going. I think I'm missing a few too. Like it's a pretty good group that we've kind of brought together to help us understand, right, what the challenges are going to be in trying to do this, because I think there was a comment there about what's going to make this program different from past programs, and how are we going to get that, how are we going to drive participation and increase the intake. And that's what we're doing, right? We're trying to get as many people who are understanding where those roadblocks are, and then try to put measures in place that will start to be able to try and take down some of those barriers and get more participation in what's a pretty important to be a high subscribed program.
Okay, well, that's great. It's lots of different groups in there. What I'm looking at is more of a citizen, like regular folk, just Peterborough advocacy lobbying group that is not connecting with any organization or association, just regular folks. Because this information could get muddled under a lot of other things. So I just wonder if there is a advocacy citizen, just regular people.
Yeah, and that's something we can take back. So we do have 3 of these kind of open to the public sessions that are planned over the next few months during the program design. But when we talk about actually implementing and that front, we can take a look and see how, like, what is possible in terms of also engaging some citizens. And so for sure, residents would be engaged that are going through the process, but also those who have connections. It would be valuable to have their voices as well. So I think it's a great idea. Perfect.
We had another question from Cheryl. Could the city HEEP loan complement or extend the federal HEEP grant rebate program?
Yes. So in all likelihood, the federal grant and the city's HEEP would be complementary. So the grant would reduce the amount of loan required, which is excellent. So ultimately the homeowner would pay less. So let's say you did a $30,000 retrofit and receive $5,000 from the federal grant. Then there'd only be $25,000 remaining, which would go through this HEEP program. So at $1,000 a year for 25 years. We haven't ironed out the details yet, but essentially that's how that could work. On the CMHC loan program, which is a little bit different because it'd be 2 loans. Again, we're just looking for a few additional details once that's released, and it's supposed to be released sometime this year. So once those are released or provided, we'll see if there is an opportunity there as well to piggyback a bit. Yeah.
It's not. We have another very interesting question around equity. So we have seniors are on fixed incomes that need help with these upgrades, and young people are paying up to $800,000 for a starter home. So those two groups have no money for retrofits. So how are we going to help them?
Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah, no, that is a great question, and equity has come up a few times throughout this process, or throughout these discussions, and it is. I don't necessarily have like a silver bullet answer on this front, but it is something that we're taking into consideration as we're working through developing this initiative. So that's great to know. It's one of the things not necessarily unique about Peterborough, but that's necessary to understand and put into context when we're designing this. So. Perfect. I might just move on to our next discussion topic, which is really around your energy efficiency retrofit experience. So it would be great to understand a bit more about if anyone on the call has undertaken or considered these retrofits, why or why not, what some of the biggest challenges were, or what you perceive the biggest challenges to be for doing these retrofits, and ultimately what's stopping people. So again, we said, a little bit less than 1% a year, and if we want to increase that number, what are those key barriers on that front? So we'll spend a few minutes on this as well. Any thoughts from the group?
Hi, this is Judita.
Hi, Judita.
Well, I've been looking at the heat pumps for years, but cost was always the driving obstacle.
And is that the upfront cost or just the like ongoing cost even of switching to electricity?
So I live in an older home,
Okay.
has no ductwork, so still electric baseboard and gas stove. So it's really the upfront cost. And also I wanted to know the efficiency of the heat pump. So I was waiting for a better technology.
Well, that's perfect. Thank you. And what, maybe one last question, what prompted you to consider putting in the heat pump, if you don't mind?
I've been reading a lot about the efficiency, that they are very efficient and widely used. But I was always concerned about the weather in Eastern Ontario, so that at that point when we were considering, we had to have like a backup heating system to support the hot winter.
Perfect, thank you. Heather, I believe, and then Charmaine. Sorry, I think you're still muted.
We've used the energy program, the energy retrofit program, and it was helpful to a point, but because our basement is partially finished, they weren't willing to do the insulation that we needed, which was really disappointing because that's what we needed the most. We have unfinished, we have block wall foundation walls that are not finished at all. And we really were hoping to get those covered. They offered us a new fridge, which was nice. They offered us light bulbs and a few different things, but were unable to help us unless we could give them more walls to finish. So that was disappointing, actually.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, something to take into consideration. Charmaine?
Yeah, so I don't know what I got. I could honestly say, I think there was something on YouTube or something with, I think, Enbridge, and I filled in the survey. Next thing you know, they called me and they were like, oh, we could come and do this evaluation. So they came over, and next thing I knew, I was getting a tankless hot water tank. I got a filter, and they put some insulation in the attic. Needless to say, it was $15,000.
Yeah.
But and I think it was called Smart Homes or something.
Okay.
But then when I did some more research after the fact, after everything was done, I got a link from Al Slavin, who linked me to the federal one. So then I connected with them, and so Peterborough Green Up is coming to my place in March, and it's like a 3-hour, 2-hour assessment, which will be great. So I'm really looking forward to that. But so there was, like, I think Cheryl was mentioning, there's all these different programs.
Yes.
And I was like oblivious to, they had said Enbridge, you know, it will efficiency for your home heating, whatever. But then I thought it didn't seem like it was now the right one, because the one from Peterborough Green Up is a 3-hour, I think 3 or 2. Somebody's going to have to correct me on that one, which would probably be much more extensive than the one that I got from, I believe, Enbridge. I'm not even sure. But at the end of the day, yeah. And then the financing, I don't know how they did the financing. I didn't have to pay up front, but you had to be working or something like that. And they financed it. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to the one that Peterborough Green Up is going to be doing in March, and see what else is going to be needed to make my home more efficient. I really want it to be much more. I got all the windows replaced on the home, you know, a new heating system, but I still think there's more to be done. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's great that you have so much interest in pursuing this. It'll be interesting to see what Green Up has to say after their evaluation. Any other experiences, Cheryl? Sorry, Cheryl, I think you might be on mute.
What I'm gathering from comments from Charmaine and others is a kind of muddled scene. And I hope that you'll give really serious thought to simplified communication and distinguishing one program from another. And also to people who might be stacking or using one program to complement the other, giving real assistance, again, particularly to seniors, but not just seniors, on how to sort out that financing so you don't end up with a head-scratching amount of debt.
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect. No, that's an excellent comment. And it will be critical for HEEP to really provide information in such a way that it is clear what is available out there, so that we don't have the situations where, you know, you do one retrofit and then you hear about another possible retrofit later on. Like, having everything consolidated in one place will be good, and really stacking all available, like you said, stacking all available funding sources to reduce the burden on homeowners at the end of the day. So there is funding available in the form of grants, so it will be important for the city to help homeowners access that. Any other comments or questions in the chat, Catherine?
Yeah, so we have a few other questions. So we have a questions around social and affordable housing. So some housing is being developed in Peterborough by private developers and also by the city. And is it safe to assume that the HEEP will be available to these groups in order to help contribute to keep rents low?
That's a interesting question. HEEP in its initial formulation will be for existing homes, in all likelihood. Again, as part of the requirements from that FCM funding. So if funding is coming from somewhere else, then potentially for those newer homes as well, but likely for existing homes. With that being said, you know, once they're built, or for any affordable or social housing that's currently built, they would be able to access the program. And Cheryl, did you have a?
Yeah, I have some familiarity with social housing, so that's why I questioned. In this case, it is pre-existing housing. In the case of what the city is doing, it's not new build in a sense that they're working from an existing set of units.
Okay.
And, perhaps some of them will be torn down and replaced. I don't know, but there's a lot of retrofitting and upgrading planned, as I understand it. And it would make sense to it's almost the city taking advantage of its own program in a way. So, but because of the existence of the GBE, the government business enterprise, that a firewall between that conflict might exist. I just don't understand it well enough, but it might be worth investigating.
Perfect. No, we can add that. We're in contact with many different departments within the city as well, so we can add that to our list of items. Do you have more? Like, is there something we should be specifically focusing on in terms of one of these developments? Like, is there a name for the?
Yeah, I think it's around Hilliard Street, Hilliard Street up in the north end, the oldest former Ontario housing.
Yeah, Matt, we can loop in with Rebecca and the folks in the housing division that are on the internal team.
I just didn't want them to be left out of your thinking.
No, that's great. That's great. Thank you.
We also had a question about looking at the capacity of the distribution grid for the added electric homes and cars that this program would bring. There's been upgrading from Hydro One, but are they improving enough for this new demand?
That's a great question. Hydro One is one of those partners that Michael mentioned who are on our partner committee, and so they are aware of the program and what we're aiming to accomplish. We're not going to undertake from a program development point of view, we won't dive too deeply into the grid impacts, but they are aware, and we'll keep that in consideration as they do their own kind of planning.
Yeah, maybe Matt, I'll supplement that a little bit too, is that, you know, there's been the IESO has been doing regional planning for electricity demand over the next long-term electricity generation and distribution, transmission and distribution capacity. And so, you know, they've been, they and then the local distribution companies are all plugged into the process and the recognition of what types of investments will be required to, to support the electrification. Also, you know, they're also looking at, load management as well in terms of what types of some of these things don't necessarily they're not all the draws are going to happen at the same time. And so by using smart technologies and demand management and sort of when different things are coming on, you can maximize the existing infrastructure to the fullest and then just do targeted upsizing and upgrades where needed.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, perfect. And okay. And so we do have one additional set of questions just around making retrofits easier. And so 3 general questions again. So what do you need to know or have ready before you decide to complete an energy efficiency retrofit is our first. If you decide to complete an energy efficient retrofit tomorrow, what would be your first step? And the third one is, where would you prefer to borrow from and why? So would it be the city? Would it be potentially a financial institution or a credit union? Would it be some other actor? Would be really interested in hearing your thoughts on those 3 questions.
So we have a new question in the chat around the requirements related to the professionals installing retrofits or the upgrades. So will people be able to select their providers and installers for this program?
We haven't necessarily gotten to that point in terms of what the requirements would be from those installers, but there is an opportunity to require different types of kind of certification. So the Renomark piece that was noted in one of the previous slides around like the types of contractors that are available, that's an industry-led certification. So that would be one potential means. There's a couple others that we can explore, but in all likelihood, ultimately would be the homeowner's decision at the end of the day in terms of who to select. There just might be a few restrictions around who those different options are.
There's also a question around a program that happened in 2011 where there was a low flow toilet rebate of $50.
Yep.
And when that happened, developers really took advantage of it. And what I understand is that homeowners didn't necessarily have much access. It was good because it reduced the water use, but if there's a set level of funds from the get-go, how will we ensure that the regular homeowners have access to the funds?
That's a great flag, and something we can keep in consideration. Yeah, there's we can think through a few ways of just ensuring that people with their own homes do have access, as opposed to potentially people with multiple, like landlords with multiple properties or whatnot. But I think that's a great observation and something we'll take away from this. So thank you for that. Yeah. I guess just to kind of, we talked a bit about this, but for our questions, just wondering like who you would go to ask for more information now, if you do know about doing these retrofits, or potentially like, would you feel comfortable going to the city? Like, would that be an entity you would look for more information from and be one of those first places? You know, we heard about, you know, being on YouTube and seeing Enbridge with a video, filling out a survey, which led to some renovations. Other kind of, what other streams would you maybe get that information from? Okay.
We have a question around the CMHC that used to demand a lien on the home. If a young couple already had to mortgage, will they be able to have this lien?
So it'll pause.
So I think that question kind of gets at, that's kind of getting at some of the, what would be like the underwriting requirements, or like what would, you know, sort of what would be the criteria for which we would be evaluating, you know, what folks would have. And that's definitely a consideration that we have to take under advisement, right? Because that there's some lenders, if you're, you know, won't permit a, you know, an additional loan against the home. So I think that's one of those, that is one of those financing elements that we need to weigh in. I don't know, Matt, if you want to supplement that anymore.
Yeah, I think what we've seen in some other jurisdictions, so the City of Toronto, for example, they have the loan program, home energy. It's called their HELP program, home energy loan program, and ultimately what they do is that for any mortgages that are insured by the CMHC, so that have less than that 20% down payment, they typically won't fund that through their program, just because the mortgage lenders typically don't approve of additional an additional lien against the property for additional capital. So if you're a new home buyer, a younger and newer home buyer, you'll have a bit of difficulty accessing that program. It doesn't mean we have to necessarily do that. We can explore that as we kind of work through the process, but that is one potential roadblock, I guess, to opening this up to all residents. Councillor Zippel.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. What I was wondering about were the criteria that would be set for doing the energy efficiency upgrades. And if you were to go with a utility, say, as opposed to a financial lending institution or the city, is it possible for the city to set the criteria that they're looking for emissions reduction and equity, and then partner with another agency rather than just choosing one? Can it be a combination?
So I think so. If what I would say is that assuming the city receives FCM funding for this program, that will supplement any funding that would be provided. So there's a few opportunities here. The city can go ahead and do a PACE program, which would be, they would be supplying the loan, like the city would supply the loans and recoup through the property tax bill, potentially go through a utility, though we've heard there isn't much interest from Enbridge and Hydro One at this time. But again, the city would be supplying those funds ultimately, and then Hydro One or Enbridge would do the lending and recuperate on the utility bills. Or we could go to usually a local credit union. But again, the city would be able to access some funding from the FCM to backstop some of those loans from the credit union. And so the city would still have a role to play in terms of defining some of those guidelines, not all of them. Like there's a little bit less flexibility as you have more partners involved who all have their own interests. But there is going to be some ability to do a bit of back and forth there. So yeah.
Just to follow up, so looking at working with whichever entity becomes a lending institution, the ability of individual applicants, once the inspection is done, to talk about the pricing, like the cost of what's going to happen and what they can afford, and then look at what can be maximized, I guess, sort of the low-hanging energy fruit that they're able to incorporate into their budget over the long term and however it's financed. Because there's so many different variabilities with lending. So there's probably a lot to talk about just in this area. Anyway, so yeah, I look forward to more information coming out about it. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
We have a few more questions, so I'll ask them all at the same time since we're starting to be more at the end of this session.
Perfect.
There's a question about if there's other initiatives to encourage more energy efficiency heating systems in new developments, being cognizant that this is not the program for it, but to talk a little bit about the other initiatives in the city. We also have a question around, we have many local suppliers of energy efficient items, doors, window installation. Could there be an incentive in this program to buy a local? And concerning the question about the preference from whom to borrow from, wouldn't that depend on the terms and interest rate comparison?
So yeah, that's an excellent comment in terms of the terms that would be able to be provided from the different lenders. So that's great to know that that's one thing that would be kept under consideration. And we'll explore what those different terms could be as we kind of walk through the process and chat with some of these partners and explore that a bit more. In terms of the programs the city is offering for new builds, I'm not sure about that necessarily. I'm not sure.
So yeah, I can chime in on that one, Matt. Like at this time, there's no specific incentive program around new builds, new developments. The focus of this program, so homes that are being built today are being built to a much superior standard in terms of energy efficiency and like insulation, and to a much better, like the building code is already starting to, and the timing on it is changing a little bit, but the national building code is targeting to net zero ready building code, and that's kind of funneling down to the provincial level. They're even talking about just having potentially looking at a standardized building code across the country, and those are going to just really drive this element on the new builds. This program is focusing on the massive amount of housing stock that we have in the city that's already built, particularly since we have I think the comment was made as, I don't know if we had shared any of those statistics, but something, actually I'm not going to say it because I don't know them off the top of my head, but the majority of homes were built prior to 1980 in the city. I don't recall the exact percentage, but it's a high percentage, the majority for sure. And so those are the ones that we know are in need of improvements, because they just weren't part of standard practice when those were getting constructed. So I think that's kind of that's the reason why the focus of this program is trying to get at that large amount of existing homes that already have that are poorly insulated, poorly designed from an efficiency standpoint.
We have a comment from Natalie Stephenson about a trusted source to contact. A lot of residents do call Green Up as a first step, and they do their best to answer these questions when they have a program running. And luckily right now they do have staff capacity to take and return calls related to energy assessment. So that's great news. We have a question from the councillor, Councillor Parnell, about how people can take on this extra debt. So I think this is also related to the lien on CMHC houses, on CMHC insured houses. So the question around equity.
Okay. Yeah, I think just in terms of so that's great about Green Up being a trusted advisor in the city, and it's great that there is a capacity currently to do that. For the question on taking on extra debt, from an equity perspective, or just like a general perspective, the HEEP program is not necessarily, like lending is not necessarily the right solution for everyone at this stage. And there are a few programs out there that do provide either no cost or forgivable loans for lower income individuals. So in all likelihood, one of the first pathways would be to guide homeowners towards those programs initially. So whether it's Enbridge or Save on Energy or the Peterborough Renovates, assuming it gets funded again, those are some programs that exist or have existed that would be able to help on that front. In terms of if we're talking about like new homeowners who don't have the right amount of equity in their home to take on some of these investments, there are a few other things that could be in place. So typically when loans are done, even for energy efficiency, the savings are not like the utility savings are not taken into account when issuing the loans. So working with a partner who would be able to take that into account may make it a bit easier to stomach from the lender's perspective. So it may make it more likely for them to deem the borrower as eligible. What comes into play a bit is when the mortgage exists. So if the mortgage is with one lender and this loan is with another lender, there needs to be some agreement typically from that mortgage holder, especially if there's a lien on the loan. But if we do go with someone like a credit union, then there wouldn't necessarily need to be that lien. So there might be an opportunity there. So there's like essentially there's pros and cons and a few different opportunities depending on which financing stream is pursued, which we're hoping to have a better understanding of within the nearer term, so that we can come back and communicate that again to everyone on the call today and to our partners and the city and city staff. So as we kind of walk through that, some of these answers will be a bit more clear, but it's great to be flagging these equity issues at this stage.
We also have a comment regarding Peterborough utility group that has or had a program to help replace inefficient appliances. They would do an audit of your home, receive $200 in free energy efficient items, and sometimes a freezer or a fridge that would be replacing an inefficient one. So thanks for that flag. We'll check if this program is still available.
Yeah, actually, I can comment on that one, Catherine.
Along with the others.
That was the their affordability fund program. My understanding is that is currently suspended, and they're no longer taking applications for that. However, you know, if any, you know, the purpose here is what we would like to do, and as you see, this would be a little bit of the intention is for the program to be an aggregating program where whether it's the provincial government, whether it's the federal government, whether it's a utility, right? When folks are putting together programs that are incentivizing people to make changes that are going to reduce their overall energy demand, this would be sort of the idea would be for this to be a one-stop shop that would be able to be a plug and play, and then fill in the gap for any financing that would be needed to do the improvements beyond the grants or the incentives that are being provided by others.
Perfect. And thank you, Heather.
So someone is,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Just around the issue for finding tradespeople, that's a great comment that sometimes it can be difficult to find trusted professionals. And so it's something we can again take into consideration when we're looking to develop this, whether it's a contractor network that's developed or some other means. There's a few opportunities here to try to right those barriers. Perfect. And Councillor Parnell, just in terms of how will the average person afford it? That's a great question, and really the end goal of this program is to make this more affordable and to reduce some of those barriers. So by providing the financing and the loans and spreading that out over 15, 20 years, essentially the life of the measures that are being installed, there's an opportunity to offset a lot of those additional costs with the actual savings over time. Sometimes you can, you know, break even or even be better than and have like reduce your utility expenses by more than the additional costs. Depending on the measures in place, again, we talked about, you know, electrifying, and that may be a bit more of a challenge in today's current rate environment. But it is something we'll take into consideration, and we are developing a model to show, you know, for a few different use cases and a few different measure packages for a typical homeowner, what those dollars would look like. So what the loan amounts would look like, what the savings would look like, etc. Yeah, and agreed that many young people would not necessarily have that debt capacity, and I understand because yeah, I am there as well. So looking forward to keeping that in mind as we're working through this. Perfect.
So we have 5 minutes left.
Perfect.
So if there's other interventions, or maybe we could go to next steps.
Yeah, perfect. Let's take a look at our next steps. So really wanted to flag main requests from those who've been able to attend today is to go to the Connect PTBO home energy site and complete our homeowner survey if you have not already. A lot of people who signed up for this call had already completed that, so thank you very much. That's going to be live until March 16th, and we'll use some of those findings to influence how we design this program. The second request is really to join us for our next 2 workshops. So we'll be posting those online, and we'll circulate to those who signed up today when our next workshop is scheduled. So we'll do that. And from our end, we're going to review the feedback that was provided tonight. So thank you very much for providing a bit more insight on what's unique about the city and how the city can support residents with these retrofits. We'll share our findings, so we'll be posting to the Connect PTBO website and explore innovative financing and features in the next workshop in April, and the final workshop will be to test some of these preliminary recommendations and get your feedback, and that workshop will be held in June. So thank you very much for attending today. Really appreciated the comments and the insights that were gathered, and hope you have a great evening. So thank you very much.
It was great. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for everyone.
Just so you know, I am all in for energy efficiency and climate change, saving the world, all of that. But we have real economic challenges in our municipality with our seniors who are on fixed incomes. We have some very rich seniors who are completely fine with this, but most are not. And we have young people, many of you are young here, who I have young adults in my life who cannot save fast enough to be able to buy a house in this ridiculous market.
Yep.
And they only have so much debt capacity. I have a son who literally works full-time, has this huge down payment, but because his job is classified as part-time, even though he works full-time, he cannot get a mortgage. Never mind thinking about fixing the furnace or replacing the windows, right? So we have to be real in how we're going to make this happen. I really want it to happen, but how? And I even mentioned this at council. I don't know if you're still recording or not, but I even mentioned this at council. How do we take this FCF money or FCM money?
You're right. Yep.
Right. And use that as an incentive to buy local without, breaking any, local buy local rules. Because we have numerous insulation, window, door, builder type people here, skilled trades that we want to keep local. So I'm challenging you a little bit. Like, this is a great program. I really want it to happen, but how do we make it affordable for young people and seniors who want to stay in their homes? Sorry, I'm a little bit passionate about this.
No, that's perfect. I think it's a great challenge to have. Yeah, I don't have the answers, and I think we'll work towards those over the coming months and even after implementation. But having a program like this in place is going to provide a lot of benefits, including kind of that local capacity. We heard it from the contractors as well. Like, how do we design this in such a way that there's a benefit to actually hiring local and not having people from Toronto come in or whatnot. So yeah, these are things we'll keep in consideration, and we'll see how we can work around this. But even at the outset, we're looking at 1,000 homes in the city. It's not going to be all homes. Having something in place to start the momentum and build that local capacity, so that it is in place when this expands to a broader segment, maybe with additional support from the federal or provincial government or whatnot. But I think, yeah, essentially we're going to do our best to try to reach as many people as we can, and we'll
Yeah, no,
see.
I'll supplement
Mike.
that too, Matt. You know, to Leslie's point, because I appreciate the questions, Leslie, because these are things we're grappling with, right? Because if you look historically at how these programs have performed, they've been a little bit underwhelming, and we don't really have time for programs to be underwhelming. So, you know, I think part of the thinking is making sure that the program is designed in such a way that it's flexible and responsive enough to be able to accommodate and support plugging in various incentives and grants that inevitably are going to have to come from other levels of government, right? Like other levels of government are establishing targets, right? Other levels of government are committing to obtaining these goals. Other levels of government are going to have to be providing, you know, the money that's going to incentivize people to overcome the natural barriers and inertias that are present when you're going to take a project like this under, right? So I think that's part of it. Like we're seeing it, you know, like they're starting to come out, like, and I think that like we need to have this program in place as soon as possible, so that way when those opportunities arise, we can then plug them in, because the best way is to incentivize people to do things is to incentivize them with the economic incentives that isn't necessarily putting them you know, further in debt, or, you know, making them having to, you know, put money out of their own pocket at the outset, right? And I think that's you know, I think that's that's definitely like one of the key challenges that we need to look at. And it'll be interesting to see when we get to some of the modeling parts of the project that, like Matt had mentioned there, in terms of, you know, what is the level of incentive that's going to start to, you know, get a little bit more momentum, right, building, in terms of, you know, because if it is, you know, like, oh, 500, oh, we'll cover the you know, $500 will cover the assessment, and, you know, you just do it on your own, that's not very compelling, right? That's not gonna, people aren't gonna be running for the doors to try to figure out how to get in there and capitalize on it, right? But like, if people start, you know, if there's funding sources available, that's, you know, where, you know, people are getting a new furnace at, like, you know, 50% off, and it's like, oh, okay, well, now you're talking, right? Like, you know, if you start pushing those things, and that those grants and incentives are coming from, you know, funding, then that's how you're going to get it, right? That's how you're going to get people excited and people, you know, wanting to do it.
100%. And that is exactly why I was the fly in the ointment tonight, was to get this conversation going, right? We have to, and it's not the role of the municipal tax dollar to do this stuff. We need other levels of government to step up.
100%.
Seriously, we can't do it on the municipal tax dollar. And you have to vote properly, people, if you want this to happen, right?
Agreed. It can't. Yeah, the cities are already taking on too much. So
anyway,
Heather, did you want to
my
chime in?
questions were more about, you know, getting that information asked and answered and thought about. So before it comes to council, you have all of that ready to go, like pre-answer our questions and find out how seniors can afford to do this and convert, because I know so many who can barely stay in their own homes now. And one more tax increase will put them in, like, homeless. And young people who can, I have young people in my house who cannot get the heck out. I don't know if I'll ever be an empty nester, but you know, like how, like if you have 2 mortgages already and have put every last dime that you have possible access to buy a house, and then, oh my God, now you can't afford your gas and you have to somehow buy an electric furnace and there's no help, right? And you cannot possibly take on additional debt. We have to be realistic about this. I know the long-term goal, but we have short-term goals on how we're going to help young people survive, and our seniors. Never mind us, like middle-class people. Anyway, I'm sorry, but I really appreciate this program. I want it to succeed. I'm asking these questions ahead of time so that you are prepared for council.
Perfect. Thank you so much. These were great. It was a great discussion. And great questions.
Thank you.
Heather, did you want to chime in?
Yes, I would actually. I'm a journalist. I've been writing about energy efficiency since green was just a color. And and so I've also been a homeowner for a long time and gone through a couple of iterations of this green programming stuff, furnaces and windows and et cetera. And now I'm in Peterborough. And it's interesting because you're asking what's so different about Peterborough. And two of the things that I think are would really be helpful, and that would go into the councillor's concerns, is has anybody used Bike downtown? You can take your bike in, they'll fix it for you, or you can they'll teach you how to fix it. And the tool library.
Yes.
Peterborough has a tool library, so you can, if you don't have much money, I have 5 kids, one of them has severe disabilities. We've never had much money. And so I can do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I've learned a lot about how to do home repairs. If you can teach people how to do these things, and obviously you're not going to put in a new furnace for like a heat exchanger for somebody, that's for a professional. But there are things that you could help homeowners with to up their skills and up their game on doing some of these installations themselves. You could do things like pooling the services of a contractor, working with a small group, part of a neighborhood, a couple of neighbors, showing them all how to do it together so that they have built up enough skills to do it, to be able to complete the job on their own. I try to put weather stripping on my windows and I always buy the wrong size and I don't know what kind to buy. I can put it in a dishwasher, but I struggle with, weather stripping and stuff like that. And sometimes they're just little pieces. The weather stripping I put on my door has buckled because the temperature must have been wrong and now it's making it harder for me to close my door in different temperatures. There's tricks that somebody could share with homeowners who would like to do these jobs themselves. And so having a place like a drop-in place like Bike, only calling it home, and so the homeowners could go in there and figure out which fits with what window, what fits with what door, talk to somebody who's just there as a consultant to say, oh, you need to get this, no problem. You can buy it here, you can buy it at Canadian Tire. All these pieces would help people do it themselves. And anytime you don't have to pay somebody for something, it costs less. It costs you guys less because you don't have to cover as much in grants, and it costs the homeowner less as far as any kind of debt goes. And another couple of things we've had is there was a demonstration home in Durham region where you could go in and see things. Like that might be the way to do it. Have a demonstration home where someone can show you what you're doing and how you do it. And we also had a lot of buy-in, like a lot of that was with, I believe, with the college, because they had an energy efficiency sort of thing with the college. And so those students who are learning those skills are like, it would just be really nice to be able to bring together all those minds that have the skills, those hands that can do the stuff, with the people who just don't know what end of the hammer to do, but would like to do something with it. I just think it would be a really good way to leverage what we have and make your money go further. Just my 2 cents. Well, I guess more than a nickel or a quarter right now.
Oh, that's perfect. Thanks, Heather. Some good ideas there around, really helping homeowners do some of the tasks themselves, whether it's weather stripping or reducing water usage, some of those like less expensive items that could be tackled on their own. I think that's a great idea. So something we can.
I love what you're doing.
Okay,
I love what you're doing. I'll be the first one lined up to get involved, because our house is old and cold and.
So, what I can see the potential in that if we had, for example, maybe on a weekend, you have a skills library, like a tools library, but have a skills library. But bear in mind, those people have gone and got their education or their skills somehow, and they also have to make a living. So they have to make a living from Monday to Friday. And then maybe there could be a skills library that we could share on the weekend or something. But, there's potential there. But It reminds me of the joke about the plumber coming to the house, taps on the pipe to fix it. And the guy says, okay, that's going to be $200. He said, $200? You just tapped on the pipe. Why do I have to pay you $200? You're not paying me for tapping the pipe. You're paying me for knowing where to tap the pipe. Right? But you're Heather, I love your idea. And if somehow we could set up a skills sharing library, I think there's potential there.
It might be a great way to get some of the students involved.
Do you know we have Fleming College and our whole skill trades program there, right? And we have been fighting for so long to get the apprenticeship program changed at the provincial level, right? So that you wouldn't have to have so many carpenters to actually train a new carpenter or plumber or electrician or whatever. So there's a big picture there. And so we actually need to take it up beyond the municipal level to help deliver or develop more skilled tradespeople, especially now. Oh my goodness.
What I'm saying is if you have to explain how to do something to somebody else, you learn how to do it better yourself. So it might be a good opportunity for some of the students to share what they're learning in school, and they could be paid. It would be a good experience for them and maybe not cost as much for the homeowners. And I mean, you have to pay these people. You couldn't just ask them to donate their time, because they're basically cutting out what they do for a living by teaching other people how to do it. They're already losing money by showing me how to do it. So you'd have to at least pay them for their time. But but also if you're using students, then you're giving them experience and help with like helping other people explain it without actually having to, I don't know, that maybe I'm just cheap. But I also like the idea of developing students, giving them the ability to learn how to do things.
Yeah, there are a number of opportunities, and Fleming College is part of our partner group, so we have them on board to potentially explore new ways of delivering some of their programs or undertake other initiatives, maybe like this, right? So so we can raise that with them, and I think we, again, a lot of great ideas today and a lot of things for us to go back and take a look at and think through, which is great. That was the intent of today's session. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. Michael, did you have a?
No, thank you, everybody. Appreciate everybody's time and insights. I think it was a good conversation, and yeah, we're looking forward to seeing how it evolves over the next several months as we start getting down to some of the work in developing it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.